Day one in the books at Big Ten Media Days. 7 schools down, 7 to go. Sean, let's talk about Jim Delaney. The commissioner spoke right off the bat, and he really answered question after question about those Friday night games, and he had to do some backpedaling, didn't he?
Oh, no doubt about it. And I think it was interesting. A reporter from Nebraska was the one that asked that question. And I got the sense, Andy, that a lot of the blowback they've gotten, at least this year, has been from the Nebraska side, because you just can't see maybe a Purdue or an Illinois fan base having the type of reaction that, say, a Nebraska fan base has had, because Saturdays are precious in this state. There's 12 of them a year, and when you take away one of those Saturdays, that messes up a lot of plans, particularly at the high school level, when these high school towns or wherever around the state build their Saturdays around the Huskers, and they leave the Fridays alone. And I think that's created a lot of discussion, and it'll be interesting because somewhere down the road, Nebraska may get one of these in Lincoln, and I don't even want to know what the reaction is going to be like when that happens.
Right. Nebraska is slated to play at Illinois at the end of September. Lovie Smith did say he's in favor of this just because it puts his program on the national stage on a Friday night. So we'll see what happens. Jim Delaney says these aren't going away anytime soon because the conference just announced officially a new 6-year television contract, and some interesting elements to that, wasn't there?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Number one, we got the access to Burke Magnus and Steve Jones, two very high-level executives from Fox and ESPN, to get their thoughts on the process. And they do a draft selection process, literally a 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 2, 4, 6, 8. And no surprise, Fox chose Michigan, Ohio State, and then ESPN, ABC took the Ohio State-Oklahoma game as their number 2 overall pick in the draft. They're number 1. But, Fox has a real advantage here. You look at just the value of that Michigan-Ohio State game. It drew over 16 million viewers a year ago. That was over 6 million more viewers than the next highest regular season game in college football. So this could be a game changer for Fox going forward, just with the inventory they've been able to snatch up here with some of these key Big Ten games that have been rating blockbuster games over the years.
And Nebraska, they didn't talk on day 1 since they are one of the 7 schools to talk on day 2 on Tuesday. But there are still some subject matters that pertain to the Huskers, particularly moving to that 3-4 defense. It seemed like a lot of schools had some input there. Yeah,
Nebraska makes the move, and they join Wisconsin here in the Big Ten West as a divisional rival that also runs the 3-4. This is the 5th year now the Badgers have run the 3-4. It started when Gary Anderson got there with Dave Aranda. Dave Aranda, as you know now, at LSU, and still having great success with that defense. The Badgers will be on their 3rd coordinator in 3 years. But it's still, continued to run. And a lot of it, as Paul Chris said, it's not the scheme, it's the players. And I think we're going to learn that with Nebraska. Yeah, Bob Diaco is a great defensive mind, but do they have the players to run this scheme? And I think that kind of is where the questions will lie as we watch this thing come together.
Yeah, Wisconsin will move to Jim Leonard, who was a player for the Badgers back in the 90s, also had a nice run in the NFL as a defensive back. All right, let's move to that second day. Nebraska, Michigan, Penn State, Northwestern, Minnesota. A lot of people talking about Minnesota from a national perspective, which kind of took me by surprise. A lot of people want to see the head coach row the boat.
Yeah, PJ Fleck, everyone knows he's going to get up here and do something funny or yell and make some kind of loud pep talk or whatever he does, and it's going to get attention. And that's why PJ Fleck has been successful. His little shtick or his act has got a lot of people behind him, and it's a very interesting hire. I still have my doubts, Andy, if that's going to work at Minnesota. They very much have been more of a meat and potatoes, blue collar program. With Tracy Clay, Jerry Kill, they really have never been, to me, a flashy kind of place. So I still have my doubts that's going to work. It'll be interesting to see how him and Jim Harbaugh operate together in the same room. Mike Riley's just going to be kind of the old quiet guy here with some of these guys going on Tuesday.
Hey, one more thing before we leave is you talked about it quite a bit to a number of coaches. The earlier start date because of the elimination of 2-a-days days. That was a hot button topic.
It's a huge deal, and some people are behind it. But Kirk Ferentz, wow,
Yeah,
very vocally against the early start date. You're taking away an entire week of the summer for the players. You're having 5 weeks of training camp now versus 4 before your opening game, and I don't know if that's the answer. I don't know if you want to have your team practicing now 5 weeks before your first game. To me, you have a higher risk of injuries over 5 weeks versus 4 by just being out there more days. And the difference with the NFL when they do it, they play 4 preseason games and can really kind of develop and learn more. Where in college, you're just playing yourself for 5 weeks before you have that season opener.
Well, we'll see what Mike Riley has to say about the earlier start date to training camp as Nebraska meets the media on day 2 of Big Ten Media Days here in Chicago.